All right, so today we're diving into something that I think a lot of business owners kind of just like set and forget,
Yeah.
and that is your commercial lease.
Uh,
And we've got a ton of sources today
yeah, we do.
from Capterra,
Mm-hmm.
WDI Group, LinkedIn, BDC, and Voico. And we're going to look at why it is so important to regularly
Really?
take a look at the terms of your lease.
Right.
Because honestly, it could have a really big impact on your bottom line and your future
The-
stability as a company.
Yeah. So
So
it's really interesting.
for you, the learner, we
Yeah.
want to give you that actionable knowledge so
Yeah.
that you can look at commercial leases
Uh-huh.
with a confident perspective
Yes.
and, not just view it as like, oh, I got to sign this thing and just forget about it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the common conception, right?
Right.
That it's just a fixed thing. You said it at the outset,
Yeah.
and then you only kind of look at it again when it's time to renew. But what all of our sources are pointing to is that commercial real estate is anything but static.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit.
Yeah.
This idea of the market being constantly fluctuating.
Yeah.
What does that mean for someone who's leasing space or about to sign a new lease?
Well, for someone who's either leasing or about to sign a lease, it means that they have opportunities. If you think about it,
Okay.
it's always changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that rental rates in your particular area have gone down since you signed your lease.
Okay.
That means you might have some leverage to go back to your landlord and renegotiate a lower rent.
Oh, so you're saying that you're not necessarily locked in.
Exactly.
If the market takes a dip, you can go back and say, hey, things have changed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's important to be proactive
Okay.
and really be in tune with what's going on in your local commercial real estate scene.
Okay.
Keep your eye on reports from, firms like CBRE or JLL.
Mm-hmm.
Track vacancy rates in your specific submarket. Look at least comparables.
Okay.
That kind of data is really powerful.
So essentially, you could go back to your landlord armed with this information and
That's
say,
right.
hey, let's revisit this.
Yeah.
I mean, does that work? Are landlords open to that?
Well, yeah. I mean, landlords, just like anybody else,
Okay.
they want to keep their properties occupied.
Right.
And having a vacant commercial space can cost them money.
Yeah.
So if you come to them and you've done your homework, you've got your data,
Mm-hmm.
and you've shown that you're a good, reliable tenant,
Right.
they are often willing to negotiate rather than risk losing you
That makes sense.
and then having an empty space.
Totally.
It's about finding a solution that works for both parties.
Totally.
But, of course, there are cases where a landlord might be less likely to budge.
Yeah. When would that be?
Well, for example, if they have really high occupancy rates
Okay.
across their portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
or if they have a long waiting list
Yep.
of potential tenants. Those are situations where they may be less flexible,
Makes sense.
but it never hurts to ask and come prepared
Right.
with data.
Exactly. Have your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that, we were looking at from these different sources is this idea that businesses aren't static.
Right.
They grow.
They evolve, yeah.
They evolve. And so how does that play into this commercial lease that maybe you signed
Yeah.
a couple of years ago?
Well, if you think about your business strategy long term,
Yeah.
the space requirements you have today might be drastically different
Right.
from what you needed when you first signed that lease.
Totally.
Think about a small startup.
Okay.
Maybe they just needed a small office, but after a few years of growth, they might need much more space.
Right.
Maybe they need a warehouse for inventory,
Oh, yeah.
or maybe a storefront.
I mean, so many businesses
Absolutely.
start out as e-commerce.
Yeah.
And then they need to have a
Right.
physical location or a tech company that needs more meeting rooms
Totally.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So what happens if your lease is locking you into a space
Right.
that no longer works?
This is why it's so important to review your lease regularly.
Okay.
It gives you the opportunity to step back and say,
Yeah.
does this space still work for me?
Right.
Is it meeting my needs?
Yeah.
And if it's not,
Right.
you have time to explore your options,
Okay.
well in advance.
Right.
Maybe you can negotiate an expansion in the same building,
Okay.
or maybe you need to start looking for a new location.
Yeah.
The key is to not let your lease become a barrier to your growth.
To your growth.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now let's talk about the fun stuff,
Yeah.
the financial advantages.
Right. Right.
So our sources are pointing to lower rental rates,
Mm-hmm.
tenant improvement allowances.
Yeah.
What is this hidden treasure within a lease?
So proactive lease management can really unlock a lot of financial benefits.
And those benefits might be things you don't even realize are negotiable.
Okay.
Like we said, lower rent if the market's changed.
Yeah.
But there's more to it.
Oh, okay.
You could potentially negotiate what are called tenant improvement allowances.
Oh, wow. What's that?
That's money from the landlord to
Oh.
help you customize the space
Oh, wow.
to make it work for you.
Okay.
And then you could also negotiate upgrades to the building,
Interesting.
like maybe a better lobby
Right?
or improved HVAC systems,
Right.
things
Right.
that make your space more appealing.
Okay. And
Yeah.
landlords are open to this.
Well, landlords often have a budget
Okay.
for tenant improvements.
Okay.
It's usually calculated per square foot,
Okay.
and the amount can change based on the market and the length of your lease,
Yeah.
but it's there to help you make the space work for you.
So it's like they're giving you money
Yes, essentially.
to make improvements to
Yeah,
the space.
exactly.
That benefits them too.
Right, because a better space is going to attract better tenants.
Attract and keep.
Right, and it's excellent.
That makes sense.
And these aren't just small perks.
Okay.
In the right market, renegotiating your lease could save you thousands of dollars a year.
Okay.
You know, imagine a business that's paying $5,000 a month in rent.
Okay.
If the market rates drop 10%,
Okay.
they could save $500 a month.
Wow.
That's $6,000 a year.
That's huge.
That's money they can put back into the business.
Right. Invest it in other areas.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we know why it's important to reevaluate our lease.
Yeah.
How do we actually do it?
Well, one of the most important things is to start negotiating before your lease is up for renewal.
Oh, before it renews.
Yeah, because once that renewal clause kicks in,
Okay.
you lose a lot of your power to negotiate.
Right. Because it's just going to automatically renew.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you want to start talking to your landlord months in advance,
Yeah.
maybe even a year.
Wow.
Give yourself plenty of time to research the market.
Okay.
Look at your options
Mm-hmm.
and figure out what terms you want to negotiate,
Okay.
whether it's lower rent or those tenant improvement allowances we talked about,
Right. Right.
or other things that could benefit your business.
Got it.
The first step is to formally reach out to your landlord.
Okay.
Let them know you're interested in renegotiating
Okay.
and have all your data ready to support your request.
And be prepared to kind of go back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a negotiation. It's
Right.
not always going to be easy,
Totally.
but being prepared is key.
Now, what about if you own the property?
Oh, that's a good question.
Does this still apply?
Well, one of our sources, BDC, talks about something called a sale leaseback.
What is that?
So a sale leaseback is when a business that owns their property sells it to an investor
Okay.
and then leases it back from them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's a way to free up capital that's tied up in the real estate
That makes sense.
without having to move.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they can use that money to invest in their operations
Right.
or to fuel growth.
Interesting.
The leaseback term can vary,
Okay.
but it's often like 10 to 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And the sale price is usually based on an appraisal.
Makes sense.
But of course, it's important to look at the terms of the leaseback carefully.
Right.
You don't want to end up paying more in rent
Yeah.
than you gain from the sale.
Totally. Totally.
So it's not a perfect solution for everyone,
Okay.
but it's something to consider.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I've never even heard of that before.
Yeah, it can be a useful strategy.
Cool. So obviously, whether you own the property or lease it,
Yeah,
understanding your finances is super important.
absolutely.
Right.
You need to know what you can afford
Okay.
before you start negotiating anything.
Right.
So take a look at your budget,
Mm-hmm.
understand your expenses,
Yeah.
and make sure that any lease agreement you sign is something that you can actually handle.
Right.
You don't want it to put a strain on your finances.
Totally. Totally. And what if someone's listening to this and they're like, this is great information, but I have no idea where to start?
Yeah, well, a lot of our sources recommend talking to a commercial real estate advisor.
Oh, yeah. Get a professional.
Yeah, they know the market,
Okay.
they understand how to negotiate,
Mm-hmm.
and they can help you get the best possible terms for your lease.
Got it.
Think of them as your guide in the world of commercial real estate.
Like a Sherpa.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And how do you find a good one?
Well, you want to look for someone with experience in your industry
Okay.
and in your local market,
Mm-hmm.
and don't be afraid to ask for references.
Right.
Talk to other businesses they've worked with
Okay.
and see what their experience was like.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. We've got to talk about lease restructuring
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting one.
because that was something that kind of caught my eye.
Yeah.
What is that exactly?
So lease restructuring is when you renegotiate your lease in a more fundamental way.
Okay.
It's not just about tweaking the rent or getting a few concessions.
Mm-hmm.
It's about potentially changing the length of the lease,
Okay.
maybe the payment structure,
Right.
or even the amount of space you're leasing.
Oh, wow.
This can be helpful if a business is going through tough times
Okay.
and the original lease terms are no longer sustainable.
So it's like a way to kind of rework the whole thing
Exactly.
in a way that works for both parties.
Right. So the tenant can stay in business
Right.
and the landlord can still get some income.
Makes sense.
It's a win-win situation.
Okay, now what about this lease renewal clause?
The dreaded renewal clause.
Yeah, why is it so important to understand that?
Well, that clause basically tells you how and when you can renew your lease.
Okay.
It'll have deadlines for notifying your landlord.
Okay.
And if you miss those deadlines,
Right.
you could end up stuck with an automatic renewal
Okay.
on terms that you don't like.
So you really got to pay attention to that.
Yeah, it's important to read it carefully and make sure you understand what it says.
And probably get some legal advice.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to have a lawyer look it over.
Right. Okay, so for tenants who are approaching their renewal period,
Yeah,
what's the advice?
the advice is to see it as an opportunity.
An opportunity.
Don't just accept whatever the landlord offers.
Okay.
Do your research.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what the market rent is.
Right.
Think about what your business needs.
Yeah.
And be prepared to negotiate for terms that benefit you.
Okay.
A good lease renewal can give you stability and peace of mind,
Makes sense.
so you can focus on growing your business.
Now, we've talked a lot about regularly reviewing your lease terms,
Yes, we have.
but what's the big picture benefit of doing that?
Well, it keeps you informed about your costs,
Okay.
and it helps you identify areas where you can potentially save money.
Got it.
If you're constantly reviewing your lease,
Right.
you won't wake up one day and realize you're paying way too much rent,
Totally.
or that your space no longer works for you.
Right. Or that you're responsible for these expenses
Yeah.
that you didn't realize.
It's all about being proactive,
Okay.
so you can make informed decisions about your space.
It's like preventative maintenance.
I like that analogy.
Right.
Yeah, it's like preventative maintenance for your business.
Okay. So
Keep things running smoothly.
speaking of that,
Yeah.
our sources really emphasized having a lawyer look at the lease.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is that so important?
Well, a lawyer can help you understand all the details
Okay.
and make sure there are no hidden costs or tricky clauses.
Got it.
They can also help you negotiate favorable terms
Mm-hmm.
and protect your interests.
Yeah.
It's worth the investment
Okay.
to have that peace of mind.
So even before you think about renewing,
Yeah.
what are some things that you should be thinking about as a business owner?
Well, you should be thinking about how much time is left on your current lease,
Okay.
whether your space still meets your needs, all the costs involved,
Mm-hmm.
not just the rent,
Right.
but things like utilities and maintenance,
Yeah.
the condition of the property,
Yeah.
and the current market rates in your area.
Okay.
By considering all of these factors,
Yeah.
you can make sure your lease is still a good deal
Right.
and that it's supporting your business goals.
Okay, and now I've got to talk about this LinkedIn article
Yeah.
that talked about how commercial leases can impact the value of a business.
That's an important point. It's especially if you're thinking about selling your business someday.
Okay.
Buyers are going to look at your lease,
Okay.
and if it's a good lease
Yeah.
with favorable terms,
Mm-hmm.
it can make your business more attractive
Okay.
and potentially increase its value.
Wow.
But if you have a bad lease
Right.
with high rent
Yeah.
or restrictive terms,
Yeah.
it could hurt your chances of selling.
Makes sense.
So it's important to think about your lease,
Right.
not just as an expense,
Right.
but as an asset
Okay.
that can affect the value of your business.
Okay, so last but not least,
Yeah.
we've got to touch on this idea that you can renegotiate specific things.
Yeah, a lot of businesses has been successful
Okay.
in shifting the responsibility for certain costs back to the landlord.
Okay.
Things like utilities
Yeah.
or maintenance fees.
Got it.
They've also been able to lower their rent
Okay.
and add clauses that protect them from future rent increases.
Wow, so there are a lot of different levers you can pull.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just a take it or leave it
Yeah,
situation.
a commercial lease is a contract,
Right.
but like most contracts,
Right.
the terms are negotiable.
So this has been a really interesting look at commercial leases.
Yeah, it has.
Just to quickly summarize,
Yeah.
the main reasons why you should reevaluate your lease terms regularly are
Okay.
you want to adapt to changes in the market.
Right.
Make sure your space still meets your needs.
Right.
Find ways to save money
Yeah,
and negotiate before your lease renews.
absolutely.
And don't forget to get professional advice.
Yeah, it could make a big difference.
Totally. So the learner, as you consider your current lease
Yeah.
or even a future lease,
Mm-hmm.
Think about what you could renegotiate
Right.
to better support your business goals
Yeah.
and help you adapt to those changing market conditions.
Yeah, it's all about being proactive and strategic.
It's really about thinking long term.
Absolutely.
Right. It's not
Yeah.
just about today, it's about the future of your business
Right.
and how this lease is going to impact that future.
And your bottom line.
Exactly. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time.
See you then.